Castle Grayskull. Left out for the trash. Sometimes I get to a point with all the stuff in my place, like I get overwhelmed sometimes by some of the plastic shit I collect, and I have to do a purge, and I bring things down to the foyer of the building, boxes of stuff, and I'll just leave things, you know, like I'll just random stuff like that. In that case of that Castle Grayskull, it was just too big. It was too big, and I couldn't put it in a part of the house that I was happy with. So I brought it down to the foyer. And this happens a lot, especially with the bigger things. Like I bring things down there for people, and someone will take it right away, but then they realize, like I did, that this thing is too big and doesn't fit anywhere. And then it ends up in the trash, you know. That's the thing. It's like I gotta think more when I'm out buying stuff. I'm easily hypnotized by a lot of plastic crap, and I just see it, and I just buy it without thinking. How you doing? Good morning. You too. Yeah, so in the case of that particular thing, Castle Grayskull, it's a newer version of it from a newer He-Man toy line. And I don't really collect He-Man shit, but when I run into stuff at Ross that's like super cheap, I can't walk away from it. It's ridiculous. I become like I lose my willpower. Spatulas, 50 cents? I'm getting them all. I don't have a fucking oven or a pan, but at that price, it's not quite that bad. But yeah, sometimes I'll just buy stuff without thinking about how it's going to fit in the house, and a lot of times it doesn't. I think that particular piece lasted about a month, and I got sick of fucking lugging it around. Walk into the jungle. Yeah, so World War III, so what? I don't even think anybody cares. I don't understand, actually. I mean, again, as always, it's all theater. These countries aren't mad at each other. They're not actually fighting. They're all on the same side. It's all just theater for us, you know. It's funny too, like the UN, the G8, Bilderberg, these places where they gather together and kind of, it's like a script summit, like that people do for TV shows, or they used to do it in comics too. Well, I think they still do. In comics specifically, editors would get together like once a year on a retreat or something, and hash out what they want to do for the story for the whole year. Something similar happens with the world leaders, and they figure out how they want to run their story for that year. And I think ultimately there's a larger script that they want things to match up with or fit into. And does that script come from Antarctica, where they found that machine with those big plates that show world events that they supposedly slide into the machine and make them happen? I don't know. Maybe. That was a wild story. That's popped up on the X board a few times over the years, and every time it shows up again, I save it and then lose it, then mysteriously lose it. But I feel like one of those silent Waikiki walking people. They're always filming people bending over. Oh, I gotta go in the store. Yeah, I'll talk about that Antarctica thing again in a second. Yeah, so what it was, and forgive me if you've heard this story before, I think I've told it a couple times. It was this post that was floating around on X. And what it said basically was there was this guy who's friends with a guy that's a Freemason. You know, again, you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt. It's anonymous, you know, you don't know. And he said sometimes he comes back to his hometown to visit. They go out drinking, he gets drunk, and occasionally he'll ask him questions, and he'll start talking about stuff, you know, when he's impaired. So, wow, that's fucking based as hell. So he was talking to him about it, and, well, about just stuff. And he went into the Antarctica thing and started telling that him and his dad were working there, right? Or they were working on this project there, because his father's a mason too. And they were doing a lot of digging. And I guess they'd found these sort of underground cities. I'm sure you might have heard something about that if you looked into Antarctica at all. And there's also pyramids there as well too. So he started telling them about some of the stuff they were finding. And as they were exploring these cities, like these underground cities and these pyramid structures and stuff, they would have workers that they would hire that, you know, weren't like them, that they weren't in their Mason group, whatever. And they would send them in to explore areas because it was really booby-trapped. So I don't know where they're getting these guys. They're hiring them to go in and try to map this thing. Basically, they were sending them in as cannon fire to set off the traps. He said the traps were like Indiana Jones movie style type crazy traps. He didn't elaborate on what it was. It'd be great if I could dig this post up again, but I'm just going to give you the gist of it because, you know, it's very detailed. It's a multi-part thing, and it shows up on X quite a bit, at least once a year. If you, I mean, you'll see it if you go there for any reasonable amount of time. And one of the things he said, aside from a bunch of other weird stuff, like these giants on thrones, these frozen giants on thrones, they think Satan is there, and he's in the form of some kind of virus or some kind of, well, not a virus. I'm starting to sound like the heckin' science bros. A virus doesn't leave the body. It's some kind of contagion, the form he's in. There's a whole lot to it, but they found this machine there, and this machine has, man, people don't see me, invisible gauging. This machine has these big tiles, I guess, that plates that you can feed into it, into the machine, and then what it does is it has, each tile has a image that corresponds with apparently something that happens in the real world, or supposed to happen in the real world, like different events, presidents, different world leaders. Though, like for instance, well, what it basically is if you've ever seen the Illuminati card game from Steve Jackson Games, it was released in the 90s. I remember when that came out, I was working at Diamond Comic Distributors, and we had to distribute the cards for our area. I remember looking at them, and, you know, I didn't really think much of it. It was a conspiracy kind of card game, and a friend of mine grabbed a couple sets of it. But the images on the cards have like sort of illustrations that correspond eerily similar with world events that have happened since. Like, I'll throw a couple up on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about. You know, it predicted basically everything that happened within the next 20 years in some fashion. And some photos or some images on these cards are almost exact. You know, like the 7-Eleven thing, the Trump one. Pretty crazy shit. What, he didn't mention these cards to the guy or anything like that. This was put together later by a non kind of saw the similarities between what he was talking about in this card game. He said they had images on these big plates, and the images, when fed, and they had a machine there. He didn't say he put them in the machine, but the implication was when you fed these plates into the machine, it maybe would create that to happen in the real world. or it would manifest itself. And he said there were stacks of them, and a lot of them were broken. And the images on them sounded like, from his description, like what you ended up with on the Steve Jackson card game, which came years after Anon's, from when Anon talked to this guy, for whatever year it was. And I don't think the Anon himself made a connection between the card. I can't remember, but I don't think he made the connection, but the connection was made by someone that it sounded a lot like those Illuminati cards, where they would have an image of something happening, and they'd take the plate, this big plate. He said it was the size of like a regular house window. He said they look like almost stained glass windows. I forget exactly what kind of what they were made out of, but except that some of them were broken. But yeah, I mean, ultimately the idea is you create things that would create events in reality using this machine. Pretty interesting. How did I get to that, by the way? I just woke up a little while ago, so a little foggy. Yeah, we started off with Castle Grayskull, and I don't know, we went from Castle Grayskull to that. I gotta pop in raw stuff for a minute, so I'll be right back. Yeah, I was talking about contracts is how I got to that, and the idea that these plates that went in this reality creating machine, I mean script, not contracts. I was just writing a comment back to someone about contracts, but a script is what it means to say, that it runs along some kind of script. So maybe that's something like that, or that thing itself was part of the origin of the script, like where the script originates from, or a similar machine. Because that the whole World War III thing it's just a script, it's a show. It's all planned out. It's for the benefit of us, so that they can get us to do something or feel something, or give up more of our free will in a certain direction, so they can then use that shit against us, which is what always happens. Similarly, that I didn't even talk about it, but the that knife attack there in the lake, that's another. Obviously, it's a psyop, Sometimes you got to look at why they're doing it, and I think in that case, for that particular project, the idea is to get people to think that they're not allowed to defend themselves in any way, because I think he's going to jail, right? I think it is. Yeah, I think that's what happened there. So, what they're saying, what they want you to feel is that you cannot defend yourself against assault, especially if diversity is involved. You absolutely can't do anything against that. And if you do, you're going to go to jail. They've already started with this messaging a while ago. That's what the whole, the Skittles kid, Obama's son, help me, what was his name? Whatever his fucking name is, I don't care. He, and the George Lopez guy that attacked, that defended himself against him, ended up killing him. George Lopez. Yeah, and then everybody's called him white, even though he's not. Yeah, the idea is that the not so subtle message is bend over, especially if you're a white person. You can't defend yourself. And it's funny because they really don't want you to defend yourself in any way. You're not allowed to have, they're trying to get rid of firearms. It's illegal to carry certain weapons. And then they fill up your cities with people who are absolutely going to attack you at some point. It's really just a matter of time. And it's meant to demoralize. It's meant to keep people from fighting back, because you think, wow, if I fight back, I'm going to go to jail. And you absolutely will. Like I said that before here. Like some people you just don't want to get in an altercation with, because, especially here in Hawaii, being a Holly guy, if I got in an altercation with anyone, and if they were a shade darker than me in any way, I'd be in court and they'd go home. They're way ahead of that here in Hawaii anyway. But they kind of want the whole country, and you know, by extension, the entire West, to know that you're not allowed to defend yourself. So, yeah, that was such an obvious psyop. Just look at the way that it was filmed, the way that the cameras handled the guy. But of course, he can't be trusted to do the job right. He's got to keep putting the camera on himself. He's got to get his face in there. Do you believe this? Panning back to his own face. Look at that. Panning back to his own face. Yeah, I mean, you know, I think they just gave him the part of the job they could trust him to do. They knew they needed the more capable dude to actually act as the victim, the stabbing guy. They had to have someone else do it. They figured, well, he can at least shoot it, right? No, he keeps turning the camera on himself. Yeah, it's all, anything you see on that screen, or TV, or any kind of media, it's it's theater. As my friend Aaron says, and it's an actor, well, I don't know if he's my friend now, he goes back and forth. It's an actor-based reality. Everybody's playing a part, and a lot of people that are involved in these parts, you know, they talk a lot about, you'll hear, you know, in certain circles, about what they call crisis actors. Yeah, that's not crisis actors. They do have crisis actors using for military drills. So the people you see at the important things, the shootings, the bomb stop, you know, you'll see the same lady at this bombing, and you see her at this school, just playing different roles. I think those people are involved in some way, even tangentially, with the 13 families, because they do things a certain way, and I think they have to have their own progeny to do the heavy lifting on these things. At least that's just my theory. I don't know if that's true, but I don't think they would outsource these kind of things to people from a crisis acting school. Crisis actors are real. They do use them. Maybe in some of those situations they use them for background people, but anyone that's getting on a camera to talk or to be a main part of it is much more controlled, and are much more their people. And there's a finite amount of them, apparently, because that's why they appear in different events. Sometimes not even very, they don't change their look all that much. It's almost like they think we're stupid. Because they're right. You know, for the most part, you know, the masses are the asses. You know, what are you going to do, man? What are you going to do? That's just where we're at. Yeah, so it's all this World War III stuff. Don't worry about it. It's not real. It's meant to get some reaction, some emotional response, and whatever else they have on the agenda that they need you to do, or want you to do, or want you to turn your free will over to. Anything like that. And, you know, some of these things, too, you start the story, like in the case of the river thing, and I forget myself too. I forget the situation. I'm like, oh wow, and I'm reading it like it really happened. Like, oh man, that guy. And I'm like, wait a minute. I do that a lot. Like with a lot of these, when I first get the news about something, because what happens is they play to your emotions, and when you're emotional, it overrides your critical thinking. It submerges your critical thinking, so you're just like, oh wow, you know. Just like anything else, like 7-Eleven. It's like, oh my God, that happened. And then you start to think about it, and you go, wait a minute. You know, but you can't get critical when your emotion overwhelms you. And that's, you know, something else they use to their advantage. It's psychic warfare is real. You better believe it, brother. Psychic warfare is real. I don't believe it, for X-ray vision. Fucking love Clutch. They look like they're gonna pump my gas, but they rock pretty hard. Alright, I'm gonna go rock hard in Longs. I'll be back out later. I'm gonna, I'll probably go out tonight. I want to see if I can catch any demon face people, because people are starting to see them now. It would make my job a lot easier. I don't have to listen for them. I could actually just look for them, look at faces instead. Till then, don't blame the teacher, blame the school. Water looks rough. The end of the race, pretty much. It's been going since like, I think 6 a.m. So it's kind of wrapping up now. But yeah, the ocean looking stormy.